Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for our Saturday upgrade and commander build video. And this is going to be going over the new Tier 9 experimental ship, the Soviet Battlecruiser, almost battleship, almost if you will, the Vyazma. So this is essentially a Tier 8 Borodino that Wargaming has taken and put at Tier 9. So, I mean, even when I switch between them, you can't really see much of a difference, but there's some differences in terms of how the ship plays, and it's in the cruiser slot rather than in the battleship slot. So, we're going to go over the play style a little bit, but then we'll get into armor scheme, commander build, this, that, and the other. So, what kind of battleship is, or sorry, what kind of cruiser is Vyazma? Is she a sniping cruiser? Is she a brawling cruiser? Is she a mid-range cruiser? And she really, honestly, is a mid-range cruiser. When you build for full concealment, you get to 13.7. And at the high tiers, like tier 8 and up, I usually say mid-range is like 12 to 15 kilometers. So it kind of fits that description. Because you've got 6 406s, you want to get in somewhat close, especially if you take something like the top grade gunner on the commander build. You will activate a 8% faster reload time when you're within your standard detectability range. You could talk about going without concealment if you want to increase that even further, which I'll get into. But she's really a mid-range battleship. She can, as you saw in yesterday's video, if push comes to shove, she can push and brawl a little bit. Mainly because of her hydro and hydroacoustic search and the fact that she gets the engine boost. So it kind of helps you maneuver a little bit, and you know what torpedoes may be coming, or destroyers and smoke screens, submarines, this, that, and the other. So armor layout, as I talked about, the main weaknesses with Vyazma revolves around her armor scheme. So you have, well, like let's say 3 things. So you have a pretty high concealment for a tier 9 cruiser in the game. You have a very vulnerable broadside, which we'll get talking about, and then the nose of Vyazma. I mean, you have this massive 25mm nose, and even if you're sailing away, right, you've got a 25mm stern here as well, then backed up by 40mm armor belt and deck plating. But you'll eat a lot of the larger caliber battleship shells for breakfast. Like if I take this away, sometimes I don't remember if this has happened to me, but like it feels like sometimes I'll have a shell from like Montana 406 that sinks through my nose and hits my citadel. I'm pretty sure that's happened to me. So this massive 25mm nose, you eat a lot of damage with it. If people know and expose this weakness, especially semi-armor piercing, like Colombo, Venezia's, it makes life really painful, and even a Venezia can pin this back here. So SAP aircraft carriers with like armor piercing, they really expose the weakness of this ship, especially the broadside. So I'll just go ahead and show you the Citadel now. You can see it's an above waterline Citadel. It's 220. It's in a exposed Citadel, so there's nothing else in between that, and then you see also you've got a 120mm backing it up here. So if you go broadside, expect to be absolutely punished if there's a heavy cruiser, battle cruiser, battleship paying attention to that. So you do want to be mindful, but otherwise you can easily bounce, deflect shells if you angle your belt properly. So you know it's 220, 220. And then 40 on top. So you've tried to bait people in the shooting here. And the good thing about this ship is, you know, in one sense, you don't have a rear turret, so you're not going to be tempted to show a lot of broadside. A lot of the play of Vyazma is kind of sitting bow in and rocking the ship back and forth, maybe using your engine boost, because there's no need to be showing broadside. When you show broadside in this ship, you get punished, okay? And that especially goes for early positioning. If you get too close before you get to the flank you want to get to, you gotta be mindful of that. So CV spotting is a pain early on if you're trying to maneuver and you have battleships taking pot shots at you, just because you will get wrecked. But other than that, the gun mount armor, the frontal plate has 495. It's 230 on the side, and then even stronger in the back, 410 with 270 on top. So you won't normally get the main batteries incapacitated, because if you do get a main battery turret incapacitated, it sucks because you instantly lose a half of your firepower outside of some secondaries on the back of your ship. So let's talk about modules. So there's nothing further to research here. So if you're full health, you're 29-second reload time. We do take gun feeder, so 17.4 second shell switching time. 180 degree turn time is 22.3 seconds. It's actually pretty good. The ships are pretty known for that. It's actually worse on Borodino. So it's kind of ironic that you actually end up getting a buff on Vyazma, but we don't get aiming systems here, so we are taking gun feeder. And then it could be that also if I threw on him back on, yeah. So it's just because I didn't have the commander on, and then main battery in the third slot here. So it's the same if you go for the full build on the 180 turn time. So that's definitely helpful to have that lowered. And then you have a maximum HE shell damage is 5,800, and maximum AP shell damage would be 13,250. Here you see 13,913, and that's because of one of the skills I've taken being the heavy AP shells, which I'll talk about the pros and the cons of the build that I have, and maybe some other options here shortly. Hull also we're only 64,200. If we were to take Charlie Kilo, that gets us up to 67,450. If we also took Survivability Expert, it would add 4,050 hit points. So then you would be getting over 71,000. So not having Survivability Expert on this commander does hurt us here. And that's one of the things I will get into about. But you have a lot of hit points as a tier 9 cruiser to play with. Right, it's pretty potent. If we go to something like Riga, come here. You see 50,000. Maybe go to Donskoy, 43,000. But that's also not having a commander on the ship. So it's you have a lot of hit points to spend, and that you need the hit points because of some of the weaknesses of your armor scheme, if you will. The main battery firing range is 21 kilometers. Note when you do fire your burst fire modified shells, it's going to drop. Let's see, I'll go to here. It'll be 12 kilometers. I just wanted to confirm that. So just be mindful that you can't burst fire at longer ranges, only if you're within that 12 kilometers. That's another reason why I say this battleship plays in that 12 to 15 kilometers. She's a mid-range cruiser. And then propulsion, 210,000 hit points, 31.6 or 210,000 horsepower, excuse me. Just waking up and having some coffee. At 31.6 knots, with the Sierra mic, you can see 33.2 knots. And then we have a plus 15% engine boost. So I'll just put it on the screen here, how fast that gets us. That should be over 35 knots if I'm not mistaken. So you can reposition on the map pretty quick. You can push, you can disengage on the flank if needed. So that's helpful. In terms of the first slot on the upgrades, I'm going to recommend taking the main armaments mod 1. This is just going to help reduce the risk of your main battery becoming incapacitated, improve the main battery survivability, and if they should become incapacitated, improve the main battery repair time. This is really the best one to take here. You don't really need to build into your AA or secondaries, and the damage control party, which would be a plus 40% on your action time. This is, again, a cruiser, so it's only 5-second action time, so it wouldn't be making a huge difference here. Second slot, I'm probably going to do this today with y'all, but if you don't have the coal resources to take a special upgrade, what I would say is take engine room protection. This is just going to reduce the risk of your engine and your steering gears becoming incapacitated, and then also improve the engine repair time and the steering gears repair time. If you do have the coal to take, I would say pick up Engine Boost Mod 1 or Hydroacoustic Search Mod 1. So right now, our action time on our Hydro is 100 seconds. And I think it was the video yesterday. You saw, I think my Hydro ran out before I was able to run up on a kid and smoke. But I think our CV ended up spotting him when he came out of it. But you can pick this up and it'll add plus 20% on your consumable action time. So the coupons just reset the other day. So normally it's 17,000 coal. Otherwise it's 12,750 coal. So I have 35,000 to spend. I just picked up Tulsa the other day at full price. So we took a hit on our coal resources. So I'm going to go ahead and just sell this. No need to demount. It's pretty cheap. And then you're going to see 100 seconds turn into 120 seconds. And then I'll talk about some combat signals that can influence as well. So in my opinion, I mean, you're mainly bow in, so you're not really playing this kiting role where your stingers or your engine's becoming incapacitated, right? So then probably that's one of the reasons why Wargaming maybe might recommend this upgrade more than normal. I'm just take this one out of habit with cruisers. But this would be really good, or going for the engine boost to increase your action time. You go from 180 to like 210 maybe. What was it? That's a 30%. So you could have a longer lasting engine boost. There's just so much torpedoes in the game, so that's kind of why I went for Hydroacoustic Search Mod 1. Third slot, because you don't get aiming systems Mod 1, which would be quite cracked because you're already getting an improved dispersion with the fighter flight experimental ship future. So then you're just going to take main battery Mod 2 and improving your main battery traverse speed with, as you're seeing right now, 22.3 seconds, also taking into account grease the gears on our commander. No need really for secondary battery. It's not a secondary battery cruiser or really doing anything with the AA guns, in my opinion. For the fourth slot, Propulsion Mod 1, the time to reach full engine power and accelerating, negative 15%. So I think I talked about yesterday, I've had some games where you have battleships shooting at you, let's say 18 to, I've had up to 24 kilometers away, popping shots at me. If I'm kind of sitting not completely stationary, but being able to utilize the propulsion of it going forward or reversing to help juke some shots with your hydro or your engine boost going is really, really, really helpful. I have liked this a lot because of the play style that the ship has. So I would recommend taking this. You can always test out the damage control system Mod 2 because it kind of sucks because you don't get to take fire prevention. Back in the day, you could take fire prevention on cruisers. So you will take a decent amount of damage in terms of fires ticking and lessening your hit points. So this is also a viable option, I would say, here on Vyazma, if that's you. Otherwise, I prefer Propulsion Mod 1. So feel free to test them both out. Fifth slot, we've gone for the Concealment System Mod 1. This is helping us build down to that 13.7 by sea, 9.5 by air. I have found that it's really helpful to build in the Conceal. When you start off from your spawn, let's say you start off in the middle, and you need to get to the right flank or the left flank. If you go too close in and then decide to pick a flank, then you often get slapped. I had 2 games. I got really frustrated. They were back to back. I got obliterated at the beginning. And I was like, okay, thank Moskva, Flimsy. And in Moskva, like, you're on the BC line and you kind of sail to whatever flank, and then you kind of go more angled, bow in, moving to the position you want to be. Otherwise, it's just pain. Maybe if CV spotting goes away, for the most part, then maybe it'd be easier to take something like if you really wanted to do Steering Gears Mod 2, but I mean, ultimately, I think this is the better route to go. Sixth slot, you're only going to get 2 options here, main battery Mod 3 or auxiliary armaments Mod 2, which would be for your AA and secondary, so really it's main battery Mod 3. So that brings you down to the 29-second reload you see right now. Otherwise, what you'd be like 31 or something like that. Or 32, maybe close to 33 actually. Yeah, it'd be 30, around 32 point something perhaps. So this is really, really, really good. Especially you get good synergy with this upgrade when you tie in the F key, when you're tying in this fighter flight. That gives you a negative 15% on your main battery load time, and then taking adrenaline rush on your commander. So really, this is like the obvious option to take in my opinion. So let's talk about the experimental ship futures. So the fighter flight experimental ship future, your ship's characteristics gradually improve as she loses hit points, down to the minimum HP threshold. As you restore the HP, these modifiers become less effective. Your ship may begin battle with a reduced amount of HP. So you do begin the battle with a reduced amount of HP. And I think it is actually around that 16,000 or 17,000. Maybe it's a little bit more. I can't remember. Oh, HP when it starts there. It tells me right there, 29,600 or 29,000. Yeah, now it's even less because we took Charlie Kilo off. So you can see that's actually a big difference when you're starting off the game if you have Charlie Kilo or not. But with Charlie Kilo, it's 26,980 hit points. So as you lose hit points, your main battery reload time can be maximum like negative 15%, and then your main battery shell dispersion like a maximum of negative 17%. So you can have some really filthy dispersion and a pretty filthy reload time as you lose a lot of hit points. Your top grade gunner's active, you've got the main battery mod 3, and you've got Adrenaline Rush on your commander. So really this has good synergy between those upgrades in commander build and even the burst fire. Helps the reload time of the burst fire immensely as well. And then you have the limited stock shells. So if I click that, you'll see it pop up here. Shells with special characteristics in limited number. Once you reach the limit, they are replaced by typical modified shells of the alternative firing mode. Can only be used in the alternative firing mode. So let's just go talk right about the armament now. So these specific modified AP shells, you can see here there's a few things in how they differ, okay? The first is you're going to have a longer reload time because you've used the burst fire of the modified shells. And then you see that the range drops from the 21 kilometer to the 12 kilometer. Okay, that's the bad news. The good news is you're going to get 12 shots off instead of 6 shots, and an interval between the shots being 1.5 seconds. The initial shell velocity jumps by 70 meters a second, so you go from 830 meters a second to 900 meters a second, and the maximum main battery shell dispersion drops to 175, where if it's off, you can see here it's 267. So that's a big difference, right? So you can get some really nasty salvos. So especially when you're starting the game off, I really try to focus on only using these when I get, maybe it's a cruiser that's bowing, and I know with my 406s I can sink right through the nose. You know, especially you crap on tier 7 cruisers because you just overmatched them with 406s. So it's really unfair when tier 7 ships go up against you and you're tier 9 in randoms, as an example. And then just broadside shots. You saw some examples yesterday using this early on. So it's really potent, really powerful. But the other characteristics in terms of our maximum damage being 13,913 with the commander perk we have, otherwise it'd just be 13,250. But standard armor piercing is, here you can see it's 830 meters a second, it's 21 kilometer range, and then the maximum main battery shell dispersion 267. But of course, if we're losing some hit points, then that will alter, that will start decreasing as well as the reload time with Adrenaline Rush, and then top grade gunner active on the commander, right? So you have that rolling, and then with the high explosive shells, you can see here there's a kind of a difference actually when you click on this. It flips into something different, where basically the only change you see here is just the maximum main battery shell dispersion. Apparently they just decided to make the color look a little different, but there's no different characteristics compared to the normal high explosive, which actually, by the way, has a 40% fire rate. So sometimes I'm switching to high explosive, definitely with submarines and destroyers. And then if there's a faraway target, you know, sometimes I might find myself firing the high explosive. Normally you find yourself firing more AP than high explosive, but hey, sometimes it depends on what ship you're going up against. But the maximum damage of 5,800. The depth charge airstrike is a reload time of 30 seconds. You get 2 available flights, 1 attack aircraft per flight. Maximum HP 2050, 7 kilometer range. So very, very, very good that you're not ship-based ASW with this boat. Bombs and payload 2, maximum bomb damage 4,200. And then again, with the burst fire, if you're full hit points, you don't have anything active in terms of top grade gunner, adrenaline rush, or the fight or flight. It's a 39.6 second reload time on the main battery. Without the main battery mod 3, you'd be over 40 for sure. So that's what you have rolling here. Going into the consumables, let's start with the damage control party. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not like a battleship, not like what you have on Borodino, but it's 5-second action time with a 60-second cooldown time with an unlimited number of charges. Then you get the specialized repair teams. Now this is another big thing that helps out Vyazma and helps you keep your hit points more intact in the game. So standard would be plus 674 hit points per second. If we take the India Delta, we're actually going to bump that. So you can see it's now 809 versus the 674 with a 20-second action time and a cooldown time of 60 seconds. So normally you'd see 80 seconds. Then you see some ships that have a 40-second cooldown time, the improved repair party. Here it's a 60 seconds. So it's a bit of a mix. And that's really a big deal that makes the ship more powerful and more comfortable to play, because you do tend to be more closer to the action a lot when you're playing mid-range with the ship. You need to get the next heal off cooldown as quickly as possible, especially when you start off with lower hit points, right? You know, and sometimes I start off the game and I don't use the heal. Other times I will. It just kind of depends on the matchmaking in that instance. Then you have engine boost, plus 15%, action time 180 seconds, pretty good. So that means we're rocking a 3-minute engine boost without building into it. Then a cooldown time of 120 seconds, and we get 4 of them. And then in our last slot, you get either Hydroacoustic Search or Defensive AA. We roll with the Hydroacoustic Search because, hey, everything gets torpedoes today. That's really the World of Warships Oprah Winfrey style. It's Battleship, give it torpedoes. It's Destroyer, give it torpedoes. It's a cruiser, give it torpedoes, and submarines and CVs and hybrids, and yeah, basically torpedoes are everywhere these days, especially a high tier. So Hydroacoustic Search really, in my opinion, is more mandatory. Maybe if you're playing operations or something, then you want to take defensive AA fire, but otherwise you're going to take Hydro. Detection of torpedoes 3.5, detection of ships 5 km. You spot submarines at their maximum depth of 2 km. Consumable action time 120 seconds. We bumped it up from 100. And cooldown time 120 seconds. Number of consumables 4. So, with all these consumables, if we also take November Foxtrot, which I like to do, we can bring the cooldown time down by -5%. So you see 57, 57, 114, 114. The other thing with the Hydroacoustic Search is with combat signals, I take the Sierra Bravo. So this improves the action time on the Hydroacoustic Search. So now we go from 120 seconds to 132 seconds. So that's even more helpful. Running that here. Other combat signals I take Hotel Yankee. So the vessel I have collided with has sunk. Damage caused when ramming an enemy plus 50%. Damage received when ramming an enemy negative 20%. Then after that, normally what I've been doing is I run India Yankee because I think you get full duration fire time on this boat. If I'm not mistaken, I can't. Usually that's how the like Moskva, Stalingrad play. You get like a battleship duration of fire time. So I've been taking this just to help because there's a lot of HE spam in the game, right? And then usually, you know, I might consider taking the A defense. So you can see it jumps from 352 to 369, 1960 to 2058. So we're causing a little bit more damage. Otherwise, you know, you might end up taking something like Mike Yankee just to help with secondaries, but really it's AA. Let's be honest, it's the AA combat signal. All right, so in terms of the commander, so we're running Nikolay Kuznetsov. So he is available in the armory for 175,000 coal. So he comes with some enhanced skills depending on what ship he's placed on. And then he has several talents. So the Will for Victory talent activates once per battle if your ship's HP falls below 10%. So they nerfed him, I think, a year or two ago, and he probably, honestly, he needed it. He's still pretty potent commander even after the nerf. Where your ship HP per second is plus 0.35%. Dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship gets way worse. So it's like plus 20%. So they have even worse dispersion when shooting your ship. So that's great for you. And then any fires, removes instances of flooding, repairs damaged modules, prevents enemy submarine launching torpedoes from homing, and that's a 15-second talent action time. And I think it used to be a 30-second action time. So that was pretty potent if you were running on, Petro, your Kremlin, and still is. So that's a really strong talent. And it really makes sense to run Nikolay Kuznetsov on here. And right now, as they have it, is you can move any commander off and on your experimental ships at no penalty. You don't have to spend doubloons or elite commander XP to do so. Then you have emergency reserve. Activates upon earning the first blood achievement. So if you're able to get the first kill with Vyazma, you can make the boat even more powerful. That you'll get an additional consumable. So you'll go up from having 5 to 6 specialized repair teams, 5 engine boost, and 5 hydroacoustic search. So yeah, pretty strong. In terms of the enhanced skills for Cruiser, it's the consumable specialist. It's just a negative 10% consumable preparation reload time, and that would be for the engine boost and hydro, as you have the hydro equipped, not the defensive AA. So this build, I run on my Petro, I run on my Stalingrad, I run on my Moskva. The biggest thing, and just at a quick glance, that's negative about my build is that I'm not running the survivability expert. Because essentially what we've done is we've given up survivability expert for our to have the heavy AP shells, which cause a plus 5% on main battery AP shell damage with a main battery caliber of 190mm and above. So I think like Petro has 220mm guns. And then we go up there from there for Stalingrad and Vyazma. As an example, I think also Moskva's 220s. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it is. So you're basically going for more of a damage build, causing damage build, more of a higher DPM, damage per minute, versus going for the survivability build. So that's really the weakness. So maybe more conservative commanders, you'll prefer taking survivability expert over the heavy AP shell. So just at a glance, that's what I would critique. Otherwise, getting more into it, let's walk it through. If I was starting, let's say I'm starting off with 10-point commander build. Then I'd say take grease the gears, improving your main battery traverse speed, plus 15%. And again, that's where we're seeing that 22.3 second, 180 degree turn time. I like taking priority target on my Russian cruisers. It's easily, you could make the argument of taking incoming fire alert and take these 2 points elsewhere. Maybe you would end up going for like consumable enhancements. But really, it comes down to how, normally, excluding Petropavlovsk, how vulnerable your broadside is on Moskva, Stalingrad, and Vyazma. So I really want to know if someone's aiming at me or not, or taking cross-map shots. The experimental ships right now, since they're newer in the game, are drawing a lot more attention from players shooting at you. So I have found a lot of value with priority target. A 6-point commander build, you're going to go for a adrenaline rush, because remember the synergy between your burst fire, your top grade gunner skill, and then your fighter flight ship future. So you get some nasty reload time. So I mean, you can easily get down, I think it's like around 20 seconds, or it's actually maybe beneath 20 seconds, not talking about the burst fire, just when you're comparing and combining all these things together. So it's really potent for your being more of a damage-oriented or DPM build. And then you have a choice to make after this. Do you want to go for your 10-point commander build? Do you want to go ahead and pick up a top grade gunner, or do you want to go for concealment expert? Otherwise, you're going to be rocking like closer to a 15 kilometer conceal, I believe, or 14.7. So I don't know, something like that. And that might very well be what you want to do, especially if you're newer and figuring out the ship. It would make sense to sink your 4 points of your 10-point commander into this. Or if you're feeling a bit cheeky, a little more comfortable, then you could take the top grade gunner, noting that you have priority target, since you don't have as great as concealment. Okay, so that's I would do this for the 10 points. After that, for a 13-point build, I would pick up Superintendent. So that gives you the additional heal, additional hydro, additional engine boost. And then 17-point build, I would jump here to top grade gunner to get a negative 10% permanent effect on your secondary battery reload time. But then you get the automatically activating, increasing your main battery reload time when an enemy ship is detected within your ship's standard detectability range, negative 8%. again, this has a really good synergy going for more of a DPM main battery build, especially since Western ships don't have the greatest concealment in general. So it makes sense to go for the top grader gunner here. And then, so 17-point build, so then maybe with, maybe you really want the gun feeder, and that's your 18th point. Or maybe you take, you get up to 20-point commander, and you go for heavy AP shells, or you go for survivability expert. I kind of already explained the philosophy when I first started off looking at this commander at a glance. I really like it. I like that my armor piercing hits for 13,913, not just the 13,250. And that's per shell. So we're causing over 700 or almost 700 more damage per shell with this ship. And you're talking about 6 406s, right? So you can really lay down the law, if you will, because this is like a really large caliber gun to have on a cruiser. Like, I didn't even think about that really till now. To have 406s on a cruiser, like, come on, Wargaming. And then maybe 21-point build, then you do your gun feeder, right? You know, it could be like, let's say you did a incoming fire alert, and then you have consumable enhancements if you don't want priority target and you really want this. Otherwise, you know, if it had a radar, maybe I would see the more of an argument for consumable enhancements, but you don't. So I'm quite comfortable with this build. The only other, like, a couple different routes you could go. You could give up heavy AP shells and go for survivability expert. Just trade the two. The other thing you could do here is if you really want to go for an even greater DPM build and you want to farm the top grade gunner, which right now activates at 13.7 kilometer range, drop concealment expert. Okay, that's going to bloom you up to like almost 15. Then take outnumbered and work a flank in the game. So this automatically activates and improves your ship's characteristics while the number of allies within your ship's main battery range doesn't exceed the number of visible enemy ships. Your ship is not counted as an allied ship, so you get a plus 8% on your ship's speed, and you get a maximum main battery shell dispersion, a negative 10%. So then this has good synergy with the fighter flight again. So this is a different option to take, but if you do take outnumbered, play the flank, where you're more likely to be more closer to enemy ships than teammates, right? Versus trying to play in the center of the map. And in my opinion, this ship doesn't play very well in the center of the map, especially when it comes to pushing up closer to the enemy team. So that's going to be the upgrade commander build video today on Vyazma. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.